Bonjour et bienvenue. Hello, welcome today to our International Education Week mini-conference series, A World of Experience. Aujourd'hui, nous faisons la troisième journée de cette série de mini-conférences présentées par l'attestation uOGlobal dans le cadre de la Semaine de l'éducation internationale. Nous avons invité des conférenciers cette semaine de la communauté universitaire à nous partager leur histoire en lien avec l'éducation internationale et l'internationalisation. So today we have Laura, Sanford, and Robin. We're welcoming them. They're former students and students who've worked abroad, researched abroad, or volunteered abroad, or did an exchange abroad. And they will talk to us about their experience with international education and intercultural experiences. As moderator today, we have Média Sheikh Hassan. Média est diplômée du programme de génie chimique à l'Université d'Ottawa et entrepreneur social. Média a obtenu le prestigieux prix Queen's Young Leaders en 2018 pour sa contribution aux besoins de santé et d'éducation de réfugiés syriens locaux, ainsi que son engagement dans la communauté en entrepreneuriat social. Média a été coordinatrice de Difference Makers pendant plusieurs années sur le campus, and she is manager for the Center for Entrepreneurship and Engineering Design at the Faculty of Engineering. She's a graduate. Thank you for being here, Média, today. And so I will pass on the mic to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be with all of you this morning and to moderate this panel. The topic today is something that I'm very familiar with, having that global mindset. I like to tell everyone that social entrepreneurship is about actually thinking globally but acting locally. So my work with the Center for Entrepreneurship and Engineering Design started many years ago, where I tried to leverage the entrepreneurship on campus, but also the design spaces that we have and maker spaces. So I co-founded a social venture that provides 3D printed prosthetic to amputees locally and globally. We implemented in war zones, and we actually just sent out 4 prosthetic hand to a double amputated child in Morocco 2 weeks ago exactly. So it has been definitely a journey, and I also helped lots of refugees here to actually build their tech knowledge, but also the education knowledge, especially the kids who did not go to school for 5 years over the past, war that happened in Syria. So that's briefly how I was able to leverage that global mindset, my own personal diversity that I have, my experiences, the resources exist on campus, and the volunteers that we have to implement and build projects. So enough about me. I'm really excited to welcome our panelists for today. Now, Robin and Laura, you both participated in exchange in Chile and the United States, and now volunteers and at uOCoaches and for other students who wish to participate for exchange programs. Laura, you conceived research abroad, and you won the Latin America Community Service Scholarship in 2016 and 2017. I'll start with you, Laura. Can you tell us more about your volunteer experiences and your research and exchange abroad, and how that helped you to build both professional and personal development?
Yeah. So hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for having me. I actually graduated in the spring, so it's nice to be back in school even for morning, be off work. So a little bit about me. I'm half Colombian, so I was born in Canada. My dad's Canadian, but my mom is Colombian, so her whole side of the family is there. And we go back every year, so I really grew up kind of with 2 different cultures, and I was always really interested in comparing things. So why is one thing accepted in this culture and not in this, or differences between these things in the 2 cultures? That was really instilled in me at a young age just because of my parents' background. My dad was also a human rights journalist in Colombia, so I think all of that kind of created this interest in me, not only in development, but in different cultures, as I say. I also grew up playing sports in Canada, but I would find that when I would go back to Colombia, that my female cousins weren't playing. So it would be weird. My boy cousins were playing sports and I would join in, but they would stay on the sidelines. And I always found that so weird because in Canada, I mean, all my female colleagues were playing, so I just didn't really understand the difference. And that's kind of where the wheels started turning for me in my journey in sport for development. So I did my exchange during my undergrad at McGill. I went to Chile and I played on the McGill varsity soccer team, but also the soccer team in Chile. And even then I was, 18, 19, and I noticed the difference, not only in the resources obviously allocated to the two teams. I mean, McGill was like, you're a professional team, you got all this gear, and you played in a huge stadium, but mostly in the in how you were respected and seen. I mean, there were so many people at the McGill games in Chile. In Chile, it was seen kind of like as a hobby. No one really took it seriously, and it wasn't anything to do with the level. I mean, some of these girls were on the national team in Chile. It was just kind of how it was seen culturally. And so I kind of got an idea, and when I went back to McGill, I created a proposal, and I was awarded the a Latin American fellowship from the McGill Institute for Health and Social Policy. So I was able to travel to Colombia and partner up with an NGO that was using soccer as a vehicle for peace and well-being, but they only had male participants. So I kind of wanted to see, well, is there interest? Can this be feasible to set up a girls program? And of course it was. I mean, girls want to play just as much as boys. It's just that they kind of are, they grow up with the notion that it's not for them and it's not appropriate. But of course there was the interest. We had about 25 girls. We sent some equipment from McGill, and that program is still running. So that really piqued my interest in sport for development in marginalized communities. And from that, I got the opportunity to go to Amsterdam. This NGO named Women Win, who's doing similar things, so they empower girls through sport. They invited me as their Latin American representative to a workshop, and that was a really humbling experience because I was just a little undergrad, I say, and there were women that were halfway through their careers or very established in their jobs doing similar things, but I learned a lot from that and got to meet people from Africa, Asia, all parts of the world that I'd never even heard of before. So that was really interesting, and it kind of showed me that there's a lot of other people interested in the same things as me as well. And after that, I knew I wanted to do a master's degree, but I didn't really know in what. I have a big interest in public health as well, but there wasn't a public health program in Ottawa, and I wanted to come back home. So then I saw the interdisciplinary health sciences program here at OU, and that really interested me because the thesis option is really flexible and open-ended. So it really allowed me to integrate my social sciences and development interests with my kind of technical health sciences knowledge. I did my undergrad in kinesiology. So I did my thesis, it was titled Challenging Social Exclusion, a case study of marginalized adolescent girls in Bogota, Colombia. It was similar to my fellowship, and I looked at social exclusion as a social determinant of health. And so, yeah, I was, as you said, I received the Latin America scholarship, and it really allowed me to focus solely on my research, not think about having to raise funds to travel to Colombia and conduct my research. So I worked with a local organization that's very established and has over 1,200 participants, both male and female. I just focused on the females, so I conducted participant observation sessions, and I did interviews both with girls and key informants, so coaches, staff of the foundation. And I was looking at if and how, because I assumed that sport would have a benefit, but what perceived benefits arise from participation in sport. So that was really interesting. That was last summer. And when I came back, I wrote my thesis and defended it in the spring. So I just recently graduated. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Currently, I work at an NGO that sets up CPR programs in high school. So it's a health promotion NGO, and I've been doing that for about 3 years. While I was in school, I was doing it part-time, and I'm now looking to move into something with a more international component. So I have two kind of basic interests. So it's public health and international development and social sciences, and they can be quite different. But I think my interdisciplinary background in this master's helped me find that when you're trying to tackle an issue, it's actually more beneficial to kind of merge the two. You want to look at social determinants of health. The Public Health Agency of Canada actually just said that social determinants of health have more of an impact on someone's health than genetic markers, which I think is huge. But I digress. So yeah, I'm looking to move into something with more of an international component. But I think that my background and experience working abroad will always stay within me. And although I have that huge public health interest, I think I'll always try and incorporate some sort of international component. Yeah.
It's amazing. Thank you so much, Laura. It's amazing to see how you were able to leverage your own education, belief, cultures, but also your own passion in life to make a difference and study stuff. So that is wonderful. Thank you very much. Sanford, you're up next. Can you tell us more about your experience volunteering and research and how that helped you kind of get closer to your personal or professional goals?
Sure. So I am an undergraduate student here at University of Ottawa, and I was very graciously granted the Killam Fellowship through Fulbright Canada to study at Bridgewater State University in Massachusetts. So I've really found that the relationships that this fellowship granted me provided me with a greater degree of confidence and perseverance in my academic career. It's opened up my eyes to a multitude of possibilities, allowed me to embrace the risk of failure in order to achieve success. I really chose to go on this exchange because I wanted to understand the political perspectives that were from the international actor that affects us as Canadians the most, which of course is the United States, as many other countries around the world. So when I was there, I discovered more than just a political culture. I really developed personally and academically. And I wanted to help others to try to take on this same journey and to learn from similar experiences that I did. So I wanted to understand others to understand what I had from the exchange, that studying abroad is more than just travel and education. I think international education has demonstrated to me an immense variance in cultural perspectives that no textbook could possibly offer me. The ability to live in an unfamiliar context allowed me to better understand differences in perspective, and through my experience in the United States, I could more critically address my cultural perspectives and more fully understand their essential ambiguity. Not only from my experience was I able to experience different cultures, but I also experienced different pedagogical methods. So this really helped me identify my academic strengths and weaknesses and expand on essential skills. This really came out especially in public speaking and debate. So these were really critical for preparing me for the workplace. It demonstrated different ways to assess notions of success. So instead of essentially focusing on skills such as essay writing or exam preparation, courses at Bridgewater State University really demanded that I develop new skills. I was often asked to engage in class discussions, or especially given the Canadian perspective that I brought, or even debate political perspectives that I may not have shared myself. There was even a class that demanded that each paper I wrote on a bi-weekly basis be presented in class as a speech on the thesis and analysis that I had done. So through these changes in pedagogy, I was able to develop better communication skills, which may have been ignored in some of my larger courses here at University of Ottawa, which were more extensively focused on writing. So this experience opened up opportunities that I may not have sought if I hadn't kind of gone outside of my comfort zone. The relationships I also developed at the host university gave me new opportunities, such as the opportunity to write and publish an academic paper in their undergraduate journal. I also had the pleasure of meeting a number of faculty and academic staff, and they were very happy in kind of sharing their advice and knowledge of their careers. So since accepting the fellowship, I've learned to really embrace opportunities that are presented to me, and I've discovered that I can move past feeling afraid of being wrong, because being wrong is usually just a symptom of learning and growing. So through the Killam Fellowship, I've kind of amassed a variety of viewpoints, both academically and culturally. I found in Massachusetts I had the opportunity to engage both with local students and faculty at the school, as well as other international students. And this really gave me insights into American culture as well as cultures from, say, the UK, Ireland, Vietnam, China, Japan, and Korea. So this community of international students really kind of created a cultural springboard for me to assess and digest American culture from a variety of perspectives, which could also be engaged in. For example, during my first week in Bridgewater, I was greeted with a lecture from a local shop owner who was not afraid to share her political opinions on a variety of topics, including government regulations, gun control, and the legalization of cannabis. So, of course, this was followed by first a laugh from me and my colleagues, and then by a very lengthy discussion on how political opinion fits into casual conversation in a variety of cultures. And then that followed by a lively discussion on the political perspectives the shop owner uninvitedly brought up. So the Killam Fellowship really exposed me to a variety of academic and cultural perspectives, and also a wide range of research fields from the many professors and researchers I was introduced to through the fellowship. This granted me a real opportunity to expand my research fields and kind of question the assumptions I make in daily life. So though it's really hard to express how international experience can affect you, I really think it can widen your perspectives, and it really rewards those who are ready to abandon a self-imposed comfort zone. I think learning new cultures and international experience itself can demonstrate the highly contextual nature of how we interpret and understand our world, both academically and in daily life.
Thank you so much, Sanford. You actually, such an interesting time to be involved in politics. But I think you covered this, such an important point, which is while you're still at school, it is an incubation space where you can test everything, experience everything, and seems like you're doing that. So thank you. Jobin, I would like to hear from you now about your own experience in research and volunteering and how that helped you get closer to your personal and professional goals.
Yeah, so I'm Robin. I'm in international studies and modern languages here at the University of Ottawa, and I went on exchange to Chile last year to their capital, Santiago, and although we don't really talk about education that much when we go on exchange, it's not a lot of people's first thought, but it is something that really helps when you're there. You get to know a lot of the things that you want to know about international education and what that means, and it's certainly not in just the institution that you go to. So when I was in Chile, I had some pretty clear goals. I wanted to make sure that I got to be as much of a part of the community as I could in just the 5 months I was there. So I made sure that I didn't leave the country. I wanted to stay there the whole time. And I wanted to become as sort of part of the community. So I volunteered for a program called Niños Sin Fronteras, and it's Children Without Borders. And it's basically a small student-run organization that goes to at-risk areas to help kids and learning different literacy rates. And we do it all through games, so it's a lot of fun. And I did that every Saturday morning, and I thought it would teach me all I wanted to know about Chilean culture. But it really did was actually widen my understanding of what I needed to learn. So it helped me ask different questions that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise, and that's something that a lot of people find in exchange. So a lot of people, when they're just in the Canadian context, they don't know what's weird, what's different here, and going there I found out that there's quite a bit of difference. So in Canada, I always assumed that something like school education or public transport is publicly funded, naturally. But going there, you find out pretty quickly that everything's privatized. And the school system is something that's very divisive there, and there's a lot of different debates. And a lot of the schools that I volunteered at ended up to be part of the public sector because it was a lot less funded, obviously, than the private sector. And you could definitely tell that in the quality of learning for the kids. So it was sort of it helped me understand how we become dependent on certain things in our society and how their dependence relies more on non-governmental organizations, whereas we depend on a centralized government. But it also showed me that there's different perspectives in that. So there's not only one way to do things because their public transport system is privatized. And that was something that really called my attention. Because here in Ottawa, I was waiting for one of the buses, and I remember I was waiting for about an hour and it actually never came. And I reflected back on my experience in Chile. And I remember that although it has its own problems, I never had to wait very long for a bus because all the bus drivers were rushing to the stop before other bus drivers could get their customers. So it's a very different perspective and sort of a different way of looking at things. In terms of travel in Chile, I stayed within the country, but it is a tri-continental country, so, well, at least they claim it to be, because it's in South America, but they also own Easter Island, so it's Polynesia, and they also own part of Antarctica, so 3 continents. I didn't go to Antarctica, but I did get to go to Easter Island, which was amazing, and you got to know a lot more about that, and people sort of mystify the island a lot, and they do that a lot with different countries, and I find when we don't know a lot of things or we just see documentaries about different things, we tend to exoticize it. And going there is really one of the only ways that I can see to sort of alleviate that notion of just generalizing. So these sort of experiences helped me to build this understanding of where I'm going and what questions to ask, and just really build an interest-based so that my learning is not only limited to the classroom, but I learn and understand things better without the walls and the teacher giving me the information. And of course, it's helping me a lot with different research initiatives. So now in our classes, whenever we get a chance to pick research topics, I have a wider interest base. And I'm definitely more interested in different topics than I was before.
Thank you so much. It's fascinating to see how a cultural shock could be turned into a learning experience rather than something that will repel you away from everything happening. So thank you for sharing this. I would like to open up the floor now for anyone who would like to ask any of the panelists any question. So any questions? Yeah.
Thank you very much. You all have great experiences, and sharing it today is a great gift you're giving us and to everyone who's watching. You all did some volunteering at some point. Robin, Sanford, your uOCoaches, as Media mentioned. Laura, I believe you've also been involved in some. How do you see that the volunteering and your intercultural and international experience? How did any of your international experience give you more incentive or desire to engage socially and do more for your community?
I can start. So for me, it might be a little different because I kind of have personal ties with my mom being Colombian, but I've always been drawn to working with the Latin American community here in Ottawa. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's because I went abroad and worked in Latin America or inherently because that's part of my culture, but I always kind of, like you said, even with research projects in school, I'm always looking towards Latin America or doing something in Latin America. But yeah, I volunteered with an organization called Progenesis here in Ottawa, and we give free diabetes screenings to Latin American immigrants. It's not something that's widely talked about in Latin America, and there's the obesity rate is increasing. So it's really interesting to see these people come in. A lot of them are at risk for diabetes, and they have no idea. So we go through them and do questionnaires. And to answer your question, yes, I do. I think that my travels, but also my background have kind of had an influence, and I'm always looking to volunteer here within the community, but in Ottawa as well.
I think I'll talk, especially for the uOCoach perspective. One of the things I really enjoyed while I was at Bridgewater was the community of international students, and I could see it was kind of impacting us all in different ways, and it was all very positive. I met people from all around the world who really wanted to study abroad and chose to study abroad in America. And I could see how much that was impacting their language skills, their knowledge of culture, and their interest in other parts of the world. We were always talking about visiting each other in other countries and getting excited about, our next trip abroad. So I think coming back to Canada, I really wanted to impart that on other people who may have been hesitant to go abroad, either from fear of failure or fear of other cultures. I really want to help people kind of open up and see the possibilities of international education, because I can see how it changed myself and how it changed so many other people who I was studying with.
Yeah, I'm also a uOCoach, so it's a really great experience, and the reason I was motivated to join it was actually because I had quite a few difficulties or a lot of questions that were asked of me when I was first trying to go there, and a lot of people are worried about language requirements when they go to Latin America. They're worried about culture shock, they're worried about safety, and for me the greatest challenge was visa requirements, so just all the different complicated things that go into going abroad, and I would really appreciated it if I had had a uOCoach. So I thought, well, if I would appreciate it, then I'm sure someone else would. So
I actually have a follow-up question on that. Many of you talked about the experiences that you guys have experienced abroad and all the different kind of learning journey that you guys have gone through. But have you thought of ways that you can, or have you experienced something that will allow you to actually bring some of that mindset back home to some extent, or maybe open up some bridges for collaboration between the two different communities? Anyone could answer if applies to you.
I'll take that.
So it kind of opened up my eyes on the academic field. So I've been focusing a lot more of my research toward the international sphere, and especially the Canada-America relations side. So that was a big part of the paper I wrote for the Bridgewater undergraduate review, looking at the relationship between Canada and the United States politically and economically during the NAFTA negotiations. And so as I kind of progress through courses and research papers here, I'm really focused on the Canada-US relationship and its intense historical changes.
During exchange, I also had one of my classes was a public admin sort of analysis class, and it helped to bridge between the community and the classroom as well. So they actually had a program called Bridges, so it was very applicable, and we would do an analysis of public participation, especially with kids. So we were looking into how kids participate publicly and how they can, or if they're able to participate through politics. And we looked at a specific neighborhood in Santiago, Chile, and how the kids were organizing themselves and running their own meetings and having their own priorities set as a public goal. And that was something I had never really thought about before. We'd always resigned the public right to participate in civil society to adults, people older than 18. But I remember being a teenager and finding that really unfair because I thought I knew stuff. And of course, they do have different priorities, and their priorities aren't always represented by a parent or guardian. So it was something that was interesting to bring back to the classroom, and I definitely think about that a lot more when I'm in classes, talking about a rational thought and the reason why we participate in civil society is only based on that. So.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. Have any time for one more question, or are we done?
Are there any more questions? I had one if we have time. Mm-hmm. You guys talked about the importance of going abroad and what that brought to you. In the international education field, we also talk about internationalization at home and how it's possible to gather all of these competencies while being at home. And while I was listening to you, I was kind of a little bit doubting that, and I wanted to have your opinions on that. How do you think, or what are your feelings about actually the possibility of gaining all of this experience while staying at home now that you know what you know?
So I've actually thought about that quite a bit. And there's a little bit of a philosophical problem where I think it's called Mary's apple, where Mary looks on the computer and she's only been in this room and she's learned everything that you could know about an apple. And she knows the taste, she knows how to describe it, the color, everything. But the question is, if she ever saw an apple and ate one, would she learn anything different? And I guess that's sort of related to your question as well. For me, an international experience wasn't really about learning these things. It was more like asking questions. So learning what to ask questions about, what makes sense to ask questions about, why is this different? Because if you're only in Canadian context, you're really only looking at one side of the story, and you can't really know what questions to ask and where to find this information.
Mm-hmm.
Say yes and no. So yes, I think we can bring an international education at home by just my experience with the international community at Bridgewater State University and international students here. Getting to talk to other people from other backgrounds and cultures has really helped me kind of gain an umbrella view of different perspectives. No, in that will never compare to kind of being shocked by a different culture and knowing the questions to ask. If you're still just inundated with Canadian culture, you can hear other people's perspectives on it all you like until you're in a different country. You don't really know what's a cultural difference and what's not.
Just to add quickly to what you guys said, I think maybe some people won't always have the opportunity to travel abroad, so maybe it's not fair to say that, no, like, that's too bad, like, you're not going to get the advantage we did. But of course, I think it's mostly just being open-minded to having different perspectives. So whether that's looking at different news outlets or kind of growing your knowledge, not just about your country and the U.S. and things that are close to you, but things that may have nothing to do with you or you think have nothing to do with you, to kind of get a global perspective. But as you said, I don't think anything compares to actually having the experience on the ground. And that also is because a lot of times you go and you don't necessarily want to impose yourself, but you're there to conduct a project or research, but you end up learning as much, if not more, from the people that you're working with, whether it be in marginalized communities or people just living in different contexts. So yeah, I don't think anything can compare to that. So I would recommend it to anybody who can, anywhere, travel anywhere, yeah.
Actually, I have to add something really quick. I know it's a question for the panels, but I have to jump in now. There's something that we talk about in social entrepreneurship a lot is you might be building a product or a service that you're building in Canada, but that will be implemented somewhere else. So what we talk about is really client empathy and to build that persona of a person, what they go through every day. So you understand the struggles they go through, so you know what they go through as a person. So many of the stuff we build here, we never go travel to our zones, but we kind of have a good idea of what these people go through. Not only by interviewing these people and talking to them, but also trying to put ourselves in their shoe for a while. So we build that design thinking mindset, but also understanding the other people's journey and perspective, and that's when you build like a persona of what does these people go through every day. A good example is when you talk about if you want to help someone with diabetes, because you talk about diabetes, they have to test their glucose level every morning by pricking themselves. It might be a whole journey by sitting down and talking about it, but if I told you, take this device with you and do it every day, and you have to prick yourself and measure it, you might not be diabetic, but at the end of that week, you have built a good understanding of what that person has to go through, the frustration, the annoying, it's painful, it's annoying. If you forget about it, what do you need to do? So building that kind of experience itself is really crucial if you do not have the ability to actually travel to these countries and go through them. And having an active listening to these people and what they go through is really crucial. So you do not make these assumptions about what people go through, but you actually understand from their perspective as well. So that's all I had to add for now. Thank you all very much. I will pass it to Sylvie so she can close. Thank you.
Thank you, Media. And thank you all, Robin, Sanford, and Laura, for being here today with us. So without further ado, it's already time to close this session this morning. We'll have two more morning conferences in this mini-series of conferences, A World of Experience, this week, tomorrow and Friday. The schedule is available on our webpage and also for you here on the walls. Aujourd'hui, l'événement a été enregistré et va être disponible en ligne sur la page web du Bureau international. Alors, vous pourrez le partager avec vos collègues et vos amis. Don't miss the next registration period for the uOGlobal recognition. If you want to express interest, just send us a quick email at uoGlobal@uottawa.ca. Et un merci spécial à l'équipe de programmation et de marketing communication de vie étudiante pour leur collaboration à tenir cette série de mini-conférences, un monde d'expérience cette semaine. Merci à tous, bonne fin de journée.